Ah, the tangled webs we weave.
What's going on, y'all? It's Theodore David, and we are back with yet another Borderlands 3 character build video. This time, it's going to be on an Amara build that I like to call the Fist of Fury build, because we're actually going to be using her Fist over Matter skill to pummel the enemies in the mush. It's definitely fun to try this build if you're like tired of using the ties that bind or just like normal elemental damage builds. If you like the video, please make sure to drop me a like and to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate the hell out of just each and every one of you just taking the time to honestly just sit down and like watch this. If you leave me a comment, I'll also make sure that I reply to every single one of you awesome people. Alright, so to kick off the build, we're going to be starting with the skill tree first, and I'll try my best to explain why I chose each and every skill. So yeah, so let's head on over to the skill tree. We'll first start with the Fist of the Elements side of her skill tree to unlock our action skill. Like most other Amara builds, I like to put 5 points into Anima to deal more damage with our status effects, and then I like to go down and put 5 points into Tempest, which lets us deal more elemental damage. These two are pretty staple for like just about any Amara build that you'll come across or that you want to try. We can then go down and put 1 point into Dread, and this just really ups our damage for when we grasp someone, as well as getting that pretty useful like reload bonus for us and our allies. We need to get down to the 4th line, so we have to spend 4 more points. These points are actually pretty flexible and up to you personally. I like to put 3 into Steady Hands on the first line for better aiming, and then just put 1 into Wildfire for the tiny chance that it gives you to spread status effects to the other bad guys. Since that is going to unlock the 4th row, we can now go down and put 3 points into Indiscriminate. This skill just increases our mobbing damage basically, since our bullets can ricochet off of enemies. We can also go over and put a point into Deep Well for an increased magazine size on elemental weapons, and also put a point into Catharsis so that enemies explode when dying. This just helps us basically just deal more damage in like an AoE. And now that we have the next line unlocked, we can choose Fist over Matter as our action skill, and also we can slot 2 points into Sustainment. This basically just helps us like with some extra healing for when we do elemental damage. And now that we're done with this tree, we can move on to the Mythical Assault tree for some good action skill bonuses. That's basically going to tie our whole build together. So first, we're going to max out the Do Harm skill. This increases our fist damage after activating our action skill, and it's based on the amount of rush stacks that you have. I'll actually try to go over rush stacks later for you guys. And on the next line, we can put 5 points into Restless to reduce the cooldown rate of our action skill to allow more pummeling. This skill is actually like super important because you want to be activating your pummel or your Fist over Matter as much as possible. And then I like to put 3 points into Transcend because this just gives you more accuracy as well as some bonus crit damage upon activating the action skill. I'll also put 1 point into Ascendant for the bonus to our Augment, which I'll go over in a little bit, and to get to the next line we need to put 1 more point again. This one is pretty flexible as to where you can put it. I just like to put mine in a Violent Tapestry, and this gives you a tiny increase to your status effect chance. Now on the 4th line, I like to max out Laid Bare because it is great for blowing up targets inside of the grasp, as well as maxing out Wraith right next to it so we deal extra gun damage after we grasp someone. And onto the 5th row, I like maxing out Awakening because this makes our rush stacks just way more effective. And since we maxed out Do Harm here, our action skill is going to do way more damage. And now finally, we just need 1 more point to get down to our last skill, so I just throw mine usually into Remnant for some added damage when I'm mobbing, and then we can go down and put our final point into Avatar. Now Avatar is like basically the key here. This skill is just so good. One, because it allows us to use our action skill 1 time while it's on cooldown. Now this is super awesome. It's really as good as it sounds, because if we're in like a bad spot or there's like a huge enemy on us, we can grasp it or grasp someone else to get out. And 2, probably the more important part of it is this increases our max rush stacks as well as refunding half of them on kill. This means that we do way more damage with our action skill. For the choice of your augment here, it's basically up to you. I like to use a lure to pull in the enemies, or pull in more enemies to get smashed by our action skill. But if you find yourself dying quite a bit, you can also just use Soul Sap for the extra healing that it gives you. Now onto the gear for the build. I'll actually be going over each piece of gear that I use for this, and I'll explain what parts are crucial, like what parts are needed, and then also what parts are not so crucial, meaning that you can like substitute them out for basically whatever you'd like really. The first piece I'll be going over is the class mod. The Phase Zerker class mod is an absolute must for this build, an absolute must. It's probably the most important piece here, and it ties our whole like skill tree together, basically tying everything together for what we want to do with this build. The Phase Zerker says, on action skill used, Amara gains her max rush stacks count, but they decay over time. Amara gains 3% weapon damage and 10% action skill cooldown rate based on the number of rush stacks. And it also increases our max rush stacks by 5. This basically means our action skill is back up very shortly after it ends, and we get crazy increased damage on our action skill as well as with our weapons. You definitely need one of these for this build, and if you can get one with action skill cooldown rate, that'll be even better. And now next we have the artifact. Now what artifact you have kind of just depends on user preference really. Like the artifact doesn't really matter at all, but what matters really is the bonus that you have, and you really need to have the action skill cooldown rate bonus on it. I'm just using this one basically for that reason, and also because it just gives me some extra health on killing an enemy, but that part's not too important. You mainly just want to focus on the action skill cooldown rate. And now onto the guns. So the two guns that I like using here are actually both parts to a terror set that I enjoy using on Amara. I'd first like to mention that since we are focusing mainly on damage with our action skill, the guns and grenades and all that are basically up to whatever you want to use. So while these guns in this terror set is great and all, it's not really necessary for the core part of this build. So yeah, with that being said, the two guns that I use are both Lucian's Calls, and they both have the terror anointment of applying terror to myself every 5 seconds when my action skill is over. I like the Lucian's Call because the magazine size is just super good, and the special ability of ricocheting bullets on crits really helps with mobbing enemies and such. The next piece of the build that is also part of the terror set is actually just a purple shield that I have. And now the only important part about this shield is the anointment that gives me ammo regeneration based on how much terror I have. Everything else about the shield is completely replaceable and not really a factor. I'm just using this really for the terror anointment because this is the only shield I've found so far with this anointment. You can probably find one of these anointments with the event going on right now in like any vending machine with a couple of tries, but this is the best one that I found so far. I haven't actually found a legendary one like this. So yeah, the ammo regeneration basically just means that paired with my Lucian's Call and the action skill, I never really have to reload it. And now the last piece of the build and the piece to complete my terror set is a Merv Hex Grenade with increased damage and fire rate when I'm terrified. Just like the shield, the grenade itself is not important, but rather you want to focus on the anointment effect, because since we're going to be aiming to be terrified like as much as possible to get more ammo regen and more damage, we'll be doing increased damage with our Lucian's Call and we'll have an increased fire rate. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for my Fist of Fury build for Amara. This build is extremely easy to put together and very effective for mobbing and like single target damage. If you need a piece of this build on PS4, or if you just have any questions about it, go ahead and drop me a comment below and I'll make sure to reply to you and hopefully help you. Even if I don't have an extra of something that you need, maybe someone can help you out, or someone like on Xbox or PC might be able to help you out. I've actually gotten a good amount of help from the people in YouTube comments, so definitely take advantage of that. Yeah, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future content, and I'll check you guys all in the next video. See ya!
Opposites attracted, magnetic and irreplaceable. Picture perfect, photogenic, doubts diminish. Yes, I'm finished acting like nobody has my back. Girl, you told me that I'ma keep you steady on your path, so I'm knowing.